Mercedes Mone versus Willow Nightingale, Double or Nothing, TBS title on the line. Is Mercedes Mone about to become a champion on her first night on the job? We're going to talk about it and more on today's episode of WrstlXtra.
Oh, yo, this is a WrstlXtra. I'm your boy, A Dazzle, the Black Wrestling Advocate, always joined by my trios team, Mex, the WrestleManiac, if you will. Yeah, and of course, the omnipresent man that is the Professor Gerard Bonner. Mercedes Mone does not waste time. Although, many people seem to think that time is being wasted since she signed and made her first appearance on AEW. Boys, let's talk about this real quick. Mex, just give us like the rundown of the last few weeks with Mercedes, Willow, and the TBS Championship, and what you expect to see happen when it comes to Double or Nothing.
Yeah, so in terms of like the last big story beats, we had, Mercedes attacked whilst doing a backstage promo. Lights went off, she was attacked, lights came on the floor, and we don't know who done it. I think all fingers tend to point at Julia Hart, but it's actually not been proven at this point that it was Julia Hart. Willow went on.
It was Carlito. It was Carlito.
This early. Oh, yes. It's going to be a great show. That's going to be a great show.
Well, I guess, we could be relying on AEW to show us some CCTV footage. They're really good at that. So
they are. It'll be 8 months later, though.
Yeah. That's true. So we are trying to find out who that was. Willow Nightingale went on to face Julia Hart at Dynasty for the AEW TBS Championship. She won that, which was great. The whole celebration on the night was cut short because Mercedes came out and she was doing her thing and everything like that. And we went on to now the actual celebration that was laid on by Statlander and Stokely, and that was interrupted also by Mercedes Mone, who had some choice words for Willow. They've obviously setting up their match. In a company that has rankings, somehow Mercedes has flown to the top of the TBS division and she gets a match without even having a match to kind of qualify for the title match. But hey, we move. And Statlander was, I think, trying to hold her back or whatever that was going on in the ring. She lashed out. Mercedes Mone struck Willow Nightingale. And that's kind of the first physical confrontation between the two of them. But like we're saying, we've got this conundrum of the Double or Nothing match. And, it may not be Willow's first title defense by the time we get to Double or Nothing, which is 26th of May. Mm-hmm. However, we're looking at a situation where it's going to definitely be one of her biggest title defenses, but at that stage. And then it's Mercedes' first match in AEW. And we, face the conundrum of, are we basically having Willow lose at her biggest outing, her first pay-per-view defense? Is this a sign of Mercedes trying to help elevate that particular division, this title? Is Mercedes going to lose on her debut, which is, I think, completely possible as well. I know a lot of people have stuff to say given the way that Mercedes has been brought in so far. But I think we're at a stage now where it's like people are beginning to run out of patience. This is taking a bit long to get to this point still being Double or Nothing, which we haven't got to yet. And it's now like, well, does she win? And then we boo her because she's a heel and she's taken our babyface champion's title almost in a Hogan-esque way, just arrived and taken the belt. Or does she lose? And that compounds how she's been rolled out in AEW.
And that's the question. That's the real question on everyone's lips is, is this whole thing of Mercedes coming in, the whole big business, we had a whole special show just to parade Mercedes Mone. and then her first match is 3 months later. Gerard, what are two questions? What are the negatives of this happening? And in hindsight, should this whole rollout of Mercedes Moné happened a little later? Like, do you feel they did the whole big business thing too early? And if so, do you feel there was a reason behind doing it when they did?
So let me just go back and make sure I clarify your first question. You were asking, is this the wrong thing to do? Is what the wrong thing to do?
Yeah, what's the negative part of having Mercedes come out when she did, and then it feeling like forever until she has her first match?
Oh, yeah. So the two questions kind of go together, and I will say I definitely think big business was done too early. Particularly if they knew they had Ospreay debuting at Revolution and then Okada debuting, 3 days after that. It was kind of like, so why did we need this 1, 2, 3 punch within 10 days and only 2 of the 3 could actually work? To me, this is kind of where you spread it out. So imagine if they had spread this out and had her debut at Dynasty. If they had her debut at Dynasty, we'd still be in the space of Okada and Ospreay. You give the women's division a nice shot in the arm. Then it serves as a surprise for when Willow wins the championship. And we all go, whoa, we didn't see that coming. And now this 4-week build feels like a 4-week build, not like we just ran into the desert somewhere and there's no water in sight. And that's what it feels like now. And so I don't think that they did this right. I have to imagine that they were well aware of when Mercedes would be cleared to wrestle. So if you announced her knowing she couldn't wrestle for almost 3 months after you announced her, what were you thinking you were going to do with her? I mean, the whole thing was we wanted to see her wrestle. We're not interested in seeing 3 months of interviews with her. Give us 1, 2 tops. But we don't need 3 months. We don't need her on commentary. We don't need her doing backstage segments. We need Mercedes Moné in the ring. And if she's not going to be in the ring, it's not going to work. And, if she's going to get the Hulk Hogan treatment, then they're probably going to treat her like Hulk Hogan. And I mean like 90s, 2000 Hulk Hogan, not 83, 84 Hulk Hogan. So, yeah, I think, I can't say I think it's going to backfire because I'd have to know what their intent was when they rolled Mercedes out, and I'm not fully sure of what that is. But it definitely feels like we're going full-on heel for Mercedes. And if anything, Willow should be the big baby face in all of this. And if they're smart, they let Willow get her just desserts and win this opening match that they have at Double or Nothing.
And there's positives to this as well, or there's ways where this can kind of be brought back to kind of make some kind of sense. As you said, if Mercedes wins, you've got the big heel Mercedes. Everyone kind of turns on her, and that's partly in tune with all of this thing taking so long, and down to her actions in the ring so far. But then if the whole point is to then build Willow, and then she wins it back at some point, then brilliant, let's go. I think looking back at the last couple of months since Mercedes' arrival, again, it's this whole thing of what were you planning? What were you expecting this to do? For women's division, for me, it's a whole thing of. I almost compare it to like a CM Punk type of situation where with Punk, obviously he got injured. When he returned to WWE, he got injured too, but with him, you can have him talking every single week. You can have him on commentary. That there's entertainment there. Unfortunately, let's be real. The truth is you can't do that with Mercedes Moné. She just doesn't bring that to the table. And I think that's what the issue is here. But Mex, what do you think happens if Mercedes wins? Obviously, you've mentioned before on the show, one good thing that they could do, and I think for me is probably the only option that would make sense to me, is if she somehow joins the Elite. Is there anything else do you feel that can happen in order to kind of make it feel as though these last 3 months wasn't a waste of time or done wrong?
If she's to win or if she loses?
If she either one, how do we solve this problem?
I really don't know, because I still think that even Statlander has something to, she's going to play into this. Statlander might cost Willow the match where Mercedes wins. And then that spirals off. And then, Mercedes might just go on a little tour of facing those ladies within that mid-card position. I really just don't know how right now this kind of benefits anyone. Like, I'm with Gerard. I think Willow has to beat her. Willow should beat her. And then if they circle back to it, and then maybe, Mercedes goes further into her heel bag, as it were, then maybe she can get the win. But on this first outing, I don't think it does anyone favors, even if there was like a Statlander interference, if Mercedes won. I feel like it would work better if it was the world title. If she won the women's world title on her first night, and then, people would definitely be against that and be against her, and it'll almost be like the heel Jack Perry kind of stuff, and you could really heal it up at that stage. I think that could even work better, but because the TBS is still just in the middle or in between, we'll have to see what it looks like. And even in just looking at the past, we've seen the situation in the past where I can't remember who was champion now. It might have been Thunder Rosa, it might have been Britt Baker, but Jade Cargill was TBS champion, and that felt like she was above the women's world title at time. So obviously Tony has been on this great run with the women's world title, and she's obviously a very, a much accomplished wrestler compared to that kind of, what do I say? The gulf between Jade and the Britt Baker and stuff isn't, it was different compared to, Tony is of some level sort of thing. So maybe she can still kind of retain her status as the number one woman in the division. But Mercedes with this TBS belt, it's just going to be very, very interesting, because I was looking at it the other day. Even Okada, they shot him to a belt, the Continental title, but they've kind of embedded him in a storyline, and I don't feel that's what Mercedes is missing. She hasn't got the other thing around her. Even with Ospreay and the championships that he may be going off and winning, he's still got this Don Callis family stuff hanging over his head. Mercedes is just, okay, he's picking up a story with Willow from before, but even that, they've done it in an odd way. It should simply be, you cost me like what we got last week in terms of the fire, and I thought that was probably the best of all the promos she's done since she's been back. That should have just been what it was from the jump. You cost me, you injured me, you won the title, I'm coming back for you. But instead, like, they started it with trying to be friends, trying to be cordial, then sneak attacks, Willow behind her with a chair and then not hitting her. Like, it's been very all over the place, as opposed to the men's have clearly had. They said they had Okada's plan ready in January.
Yep.
When did he debut? Was it March or late Feb?
March.
They said his story was written in January of how they were debuting him. And this is exactly what we're talking about. I just don't think anywhere near that level of detail was given to Mercedes. It was literally just WWE tried to sign her in December. Let's sign her in January. Let's put her on payroll in January. And then let's put her on TV in March. And we'll figure it out from there, even though she can't wrestle till May. I don't know.
And I think, I'm listening to how Ospreay came in, Okada came in. Okada's coming in, he's not gone straight for the world title, but he's got a belt, and it just feels like it makes sense. Ospreay's come in and he's had, to quote Sheamus, banger after banger after banger. But then there's similarities to what Mercedes has done, where she's going for a title that's not the top one. The biggest difference is the fact that she hasn't wrestled. And I think for me, that's the real difference. You mentioned the storylines and whatnot, and Mercedes is part of the story, but at the same time, if all these little incidents, with the confusion of Willow with the chair, the sneak attack, blah, 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 if that happened in the space of 3 weeks before her first match, we're good. We're good. But because it's taken so long, it's like it just feels so prolonged, and you're just like, all right, can we just get to something, please? But then you know it's not going to happen for another 4 weeks. You're like, what?
Yeah. There's a. Sorry, go on.
No, go on, carry on.
I was just gonna say, there's a narrative out there online which I part subscribe to and part I'm just kind of biding my time, and I'll let you guys know. So obviously she's a WWE product. Some may say lifer. Here on AEW, people saying that she's like a fish out of water. She's not behaving like she is in AEW. She still sounds like she is from the WWE. Obviously, she's brought over her writer in Jennifer Pepperman. And people are even holding Jennifer Pepperman to blame now, saying that stop writing this WWE stuff on our AEW and all of this kind of stuff. And I mean, I do agree that she does still sound like Sasha Banks to a degree. But you know, it's going to take some time to kind of, you know, get rid of that. She's on a TV product, and this is what she knows. With New Japan, it was very different to how they present it. I think she was doing a lot better work in New Japan in terms of the promo stuff, but the presentation is totally different, so you can't really compare it. But yeah, where do you guys stand on she hasn't necessarily found herself and found this CEO character in AEW yet?
Well, I'll tell you this. I think a lot of it, I think what we forget is how much time she's actually had to really hone this character and to hone her post WWE life. So let's do the timeline really quickly. She leaves WWE in May of 2022. Doesn't touch a wrestling ring on TV or anything like that until we see her at Wrestle Kingdom January 2023. From that point up until May, she had maybe 3, perhaps 4 matches.
Yeah,
you know, 4. There was the Battle in the Valley when she won the title. There was at least 1 title defense, maybe one title defense, and then there was then she lost the title, so that'd be 3. Then there was the tournament for the Strong Championship, which she won the opener and then lost the final. 5 matches. 5 matches between January of 2023 and May of 2023. Then she was injured and out again. Okay, she doesn't work indies. She doesn't do any of that. So I'm thinking about her versus the difference between Dean Ambrose and Jon Moxley. Jon Moxley came straight in after his, contract was up. So he basically had no time off of television. He not only worked AEW, but he worked GCW. He worked Indies. He worked New Japan. He's constantly been working. So you can now say, I see the difference between Jon Moxley and Dean Ambrose. You can't say I see the difference between Sasha Banks and Mercedes Moné because there hasn't been much of an opportunity for Mercedes to actually hone in on what that difference is. So if you take somebody from one job working at one company and you put him in another company, same genre, but that company does things slightly differently. They've done this for 10 years. It's muscle memory at this point. And she has to depend on muscle memory because while she's obviously been, doing some work in the ring to try to train, there's no PC that she's going to help her promo work. So, AEW doesn't have that kind of resource for her that she would have had in WWE. So I think people don't think about that kind of thing. They just think she's going to come in and boom, nail it. Well, she's been WWE for a decade. You don't leave that kind of machine and just decide to do things all of a sudden differently and know how without practicing and practicing and practicing. She's not had that opportunity because she's been injured or the schedule has not been one like WWE such that there's that muscle memory that's developed. So I think it's going to take a while before we see who Mercedes Moné really is. She just, appears to be the same person we saw with a different name and a different theme song.
And you know what's interesting about all of that is that, you mentioned her coming from one job to another, and it's the same genre. So you'd think that muscle memory would help and blah, blah, blah. But it's weird how sometimes we can go from one place to another. That it might be the exact same genre, but they do things different. So you then have to learn how things are different. Exactly. But then on top of that, AEW is known for its, it's better with the in-ring stuff and all that kind of thing. And we've seen Mercedes in the whole time that she's not been on TV. We've seen her at, different little wrestling camps and all the rest of it in Mexico, Japan, and other places, some parts of Europe as well. But yet the thing that's missing is the promo. And that's what's killing her at the moment, or you know what I mean? And it just feels weird that while AEW is more about the wrestling, it's the promo that's struggling.
Well, and that's just because we don't have her wrestling. See, and this, to your point, is this is the difference between Coke and Pepsi. So what actually happens here is when you're working for Coke, Coke has multiple flavors, multiple ways to present, and you're accustomed to that. When you're working for Pepsi, how many flavors of Pepsi do you really have? And the problem that you have in this Pepsi company is their current tagline is, where the best wrestlers wrestle, not where the best wrestlers talk. So that's why, and people have always talked about how the promos in AEW in general across the board leave a lot to be desired. That's because they're not concerned about that. They're concerned about wrestling. So if you now take wrestling off the table for Mercedes because she can't physically do it, what do you have then in a company that lives on being a wrestling company? They don't want entertainment. They don't want promos. This is a problem.
And just to piggyback off that, I think I was saying this last week on Wrestlings. You want to highlight the fact this is where the best wrestle, and Mercedes is one of the best, and that's why you brought her in. But now you're trying to feed us 12 weeks of promos on the product where the best wrestle. And it's like, when you are bringing someone in, I know there's the hype and everything and there's name value, but there still needs to be a level of research and development sort of thing. Like you know what's her strong suit and what's not her strong suit. You brought in Roderick Strong. I mean, well, that's the question, to be fair, but you like to think so. You brought in Roderick Strong. You didn't like overly put him in the middle of the ring every week with a live mic. You see what I mean? Because like that's not your strong suit. But Punk, you knew you could kind of get away with that.
Of course.
The other thing we were saying on Wrestlings was that Will Ospreay, when they signed Will Ospreay, remember when that was? Full Gear. Will Ospreay came out and said, I've still got commitments. I'll be back, bruv. Blah, blah, blah. Came back in February. Why couldn't have Mercedes done something similar?
Right.
You sign her in Jan, or you sign her in March. Hi, guys, I'm here. I'm all elite, but I have to go off. I'm a CEO. I've got businesses to attend to. I've got music to go and make. I've got money to go and collect at this place. Blah, blah, blah.
True.
I'll be back at Double or Nothing, etc., etc. Even Double or Nothing is like money focused, money branded.
Very true.
Like,
very true.
I don't understand how they knew. They would have known she can't wrestle. And now we have to fill 12 weeks of TV with not her strong suit. I'm not saying she's awful at it. It's just not her strong suit.
It's not.
This is where the best wrestle.
This is and what makes that even more difficult is you don't take a week to build most of the matches you present. We got Ospreay versus Shibata with an announcement. An announcement on like Rampage or Collision that it's happening on Wednesday night. There were no promos. There was no story. So now you expect a woman. So you've given us all, and that's not the only. They've given us incredible matches with like 3 days notice, and we're like, wait, what? But then you turn around and you take someone that you signed and you let her talk for 12 weeks, and we're just supposed to be patient until this. I'm nervous that by the time we get to Willow and Mercedes, there's not going to be interest. There's not going to be interest because you can't have Mercedes. What's Mercedes doing right now? She can't really do anything physically in the ring. This isn't a story that requires 12 weeks of development. It doesn't require 4 weeks of development. In their universe, think about what they've done in times past. They've literally shown a 30-second snippet while somebody's on the way to the ring to update you on why this person is here and what they're doing, and boom, they're in the match. So now you want to hold that out for 4 and 5 weeks for something that your intelligent fans already knew when she walked in the door?
It all just feels so long, and even just to think that we've had what we've had so far and still have another 4 weeks, and that's the hard part. I think for me, that's the very difficult part. You know what may help is, you know, this kind of side note of Statlander, you know, and that whole relationship with Willow and whatnot, but it's. As you said, Gerard, I think we're going to get to Double or Nothing, and we're probably there already, where people have lost interest, and obviously they've voiced that already, and it's mainly because of the level of star that Mercedes is and is expected to be. So it's going to be very interesting to see how we get there, what happens when we get there, what the outcome's going to be. Then on top of that, what that then means going forward. It's a lot to take in, but at the same time, it's not, you know, it's not a thing where it's intriguing or interesting. Where let's go back just, you know, to the start of this year, and there was another 12-week build that we were all invested in for 12 weeks,
right? And
that sold out arenas for 12 weeks. You know what I mean? And that was the Rock, Cody, and the whole WrestleMania thing. And that was planned. That was set in stone. We're going to do this week. We're going to do that. We're going to do that. This definitely just feels as though like there was no real plan, and they're kind of maybe not doing it week by week, but at the same time, it's like a little. It definitely feels a little off the cuff, and just like, okay, we'll see how it goes, and then we'll make a decision and whatever. So. It's a worrying thing, because I think for me, you know, the person who may come out of this worse off more than anyone is Mercedes, and I think that's the issue for me, and that's the sad thing, should I say, for me. But we are where we are, and we have to keep the conversation going, because we're going to be here till the end of the show, trying to rack our brain, and I've not got no hair left to lose. So, you know, let's move on. Let's move on. Moving away from AEW. Of course, the other thing that has taken up our whole weekend has been the WWE draft. Of course, it started on Friday on SmackDown, and it concluded on Monday, yesterday on Raw. First things first, what has been your overall take from the draft, how it was done? Because there have been a lot of people who have been less excited or amazed or whatever it is by, one, the way it was done, two, you know, I guess in the eyes of most people, the lack of movement of stars. Gerard, what has been your take in terms of what is your response to that?
Well, I think that they did tell us a couple of times that one of the things that's important about this draft is for the general managers to try to secure what they already have. And so in them telling us that really was their attempt to go ahead and say, all right, we're going to make sure we keep what we have and not lose these particular rosters. So there's that. With that said, there were a couple of takeaways for me that I thought were valuable. First of all, how, since this is Black Wrestling, WrstlXtra, how our Black stars really shined. From the overall first draft pick being Bianca Belair to, you know, the first male pick on SmackDown being Carmelo Hayes, which is huge. You know, last night, the first pick for SmackDown is Jade Cargill. Like, you know, there's something very, very special that's happening with that. And I think it's super cool. The other thing that I really enjoyed about this draft were the NXT picks. Like, I think whenever you see anybody drafted from NXT, the visual of them all being in the Performance Center, you know, being genuinely excited, some of the tears that happened, like all of those things. You were very, very happy for the people who were called up, the Kiana James of the world, which I think was great, you know, to see, you know, non-black stars like Dijak and Ilya Dragunov and, you know, Lyra Valkyria and Blair Davenport. Like, everyone that was selected certainly deserved it. And it felt right. It felt like, okay, we're really trying to graduate those people while still leaving NXT intact for, you know, a couple of months from now when they go to the CW. So my takeaways, I love how our stars were presented and preserved, and I loved the NXT picks.
Mix, I guess the same question to you. What's your reaction to, or what's your take on the reaction from most people?
Gerard is so mature because I was coming here. You're just a beam of sunlight, because I was honestly coming here to absolutely rinse this farce that they call the WWE draft. But you raised some excellent points. You do. You really do. I was very happy with how the likes of Bianca was positioned, number one pick overall for the weekend. Jade, the number one pick on SmackDown. Carmelo Hayes, the number one male pick for SmackDown. And that's like a young star that we can see kind of coming through, and immediately positioning him with Cody Rhodes. You know, it gave me feelings of John Cena Kurt Angle, you know, ruthless aggression. It gave me feelings of Finn Balor being called up as the last pick of that 2016 one, I think it was. And he had that run to SummerSlam, winning the Universal title, kind of anointing someone overnight, if you wish. Yeah, those are the good aspects. I think the best thing, again, that Gerard said was the NXT. I think, and I was so annoyed after this, and I was saying to my group chat that this is the last time. You people, please beat me, flog me if I ever get excited for this draft ever again. Because I'm a grown man that shouldn't be telling myself and selling myself stories. But Derek reminded me that this draft is for NXT. Like, that is all the draft is for. It's to introduce new stars from NXT, get them onto the main roster. Like Gerard was saying, and like we saw, that brings the biggest reactions. All they need to say is Raw selects from NXT, and you hear the live crowd go, ooh, like, that's when everyone gets excited. NXT superstars get excited. This is all that this is for. And they were telling us again that, you know, you have to try to retain what you have, and then, you know, you might see minimal swaps, which is basically what we saw. So yes, by the end of it, I was definitely on the end of Friday after SmackDown, I was ready to throw my entire computer in the bin. I was just like, this is nonsense. Like, yesterday was more exciting. We saw some returns from like Strowman and stuff like that. And yeah, I'm happy for the NXT guys and girls. But yeah, I think this is them just kind of doing their draft, while maybe in there's some sport in United States is probably having a draft on TV alongside this. And it's
NFL happened.
Oh, okay. NFL actually happened. Okay.
Yes.
I didn't know what it was.
It started Thursday night. So
day before.
There you go. So this is them just being newsworthy in some way, shape, or form. And I will never put stakes into this again. But Carmelo Hayes is here. Jade. They kept the big three together on SmackDown, which is good as well.
There's so many different things and ways to react to this whole thing. Like what you said, Max. You know, it's a case where I too need to kind of like tell myself I don't need to get excited by this thing. I don't. I really don't. Yeah. And at the same time, I think that should be the general idea as well, because with people kind of turning around and saying, "Oh, nobody moved," and there's this, that, and whatever, you can look back at the others and see the same thing. You know what I mean? Not a lot of people actually moved. I guess what was different in the past, I think, was that maybe some of the bigger stars moved, or people that were on a high at the time. So if LA Knight, for example, moved to Raw, that may have been a thing. Because I remember when I think it was you know, the likes of a Roman Reigns or even, you know, Bobby Lashley when he kind of was like in that title picture, moved to SmackDown and all this kind of stuff. When you were rubbing your hands thinking, oh, we might get Bobby Lashley versus Roman Reigns finally. Never happened, of course, but you know. But for me, and the other thing that was very different, which I didn't like, is this whole thing of, and they did it last year, of teams and factions being drafted together. Like that killed the excitement for me, because I'm just like, this is when I get excited thinking, oh, are they gonna take Montez away from Angelo Dawkins? Are they gonna take Big E away from the New Day? Are they gonna, you know what I mean, stuff like that? But everyone moves together. I'm just like, all right, cool. The only breakup that we saw was Imperium, and it actually happened on Raw. You know what I mean, before SmackDown. So there's a major element of excitement that disappeared from it, but because there's a reason Gerard's on this show, to bring us a bit of light. There is of course all the things that he said. You know, with Bianca being the first ever pick, the first pick for this year. You know, Carmelo being the second pick for SmackDown, the first one from NXT. Kiana James being the first female from NXT, moving to Raw. You know, and a few other things. But let's talk about Kiana James specifically. I can't remember if I've said it on the show, but I've definitely commented this a few times. I've said probably about a month or so ago, don't sleep on Kiana James, because that woman, and I must say, I was very surprised that she got drafted. I was going to ask you guys the question, but I'm going to say my opinion first. Like, I was very surprised. And if I'm completely honest, as good as I think she is, I think I kind of wanted her to cement herself a little bit more in NXT before being moved to the main roster. I'm a little worried on how and where she's going to be used. Yeah, that's just my feeling. How do you guys feel in terms of, yes, it was great that Kiana James has, you know, moved up and stuff, but what is there for her moving forward or on Raw?
I remember a conversation that, you know, Triple H, I can't remember who he had it with at the time, but he says there are certain talents that are not NXT talents and are main roster talents that they can see from very early on. I remember him citing Baron Corbin as someone that they said, this guy, he's a main roster talent. And, you know, although he's been booked somewhat horribly at times, a main roster, I think it's down to the heel heat that he attracts and stuff. You could see, you know, yes, that's probably where he belonged more so than this family environment that the black and gold was at the time, sort of thing. The same with Elias. Elias's gimmick for black and gold it didn't stand, because at the time black and gold was where the best wrestled, sort of thing. And Elias was pretty much like a main roster character, and obviously under Vince particularly thrived pretty much, you know, to you know, reached his ceiling basically. And then obviously when Triple H came in, got rid of it. So I think this could be a situation where we are looking at someone that they think, well, she's done the fundamentals here. We're happy with where she is in terms of ability. She's a good heel for sure. Obviously they had that is it Izzy Dame that was with her recently. That's the woman now that needs to, you know, find her feet and not drown basically, because, you know, the person that she was kind of, you know, following has gone, sort of thing. So I think as long as they have a plan, which seems to be the theme of today's show, as long as they have a plan for these call-ups, particularly Kiana James, she should be okay, because she doesn't need to do anything crazy. I think Raw is short. Is it? Yeah, Raw she got called up to. Raw is probably short on like mid-card heels that we care about, that have a level of trajectory. And I say that word specifically as well, because I think when I was just looking at the recent releases, Jinder Mahal, the Veer Sangha, all of these people that were released over the last few weeks, they never cited budget cuts.
No,
correct. The reason being was these people, there was nothing for them, one, creatively, and two, they felt like these people had almost peaked. They could, there was on their trajectory, this was the word used, that there was nothing more that they could really give them for them to kind of crack on with. And to be honest, I think that's a better reason than just saying budget cuts, because we know you're stinking rich. So but budget cuts doesn't cut it. So yeah, if they're thinking there isn't really anyone else in that mid card that we can really kick on and make believable again, like heat them up, or they're just not really doing much, let's bring in fresh blood. And that's a whole new graph, as it were, and let's see how far they can climb. So I think it's a bit of that. Again, it's not someone I would have picked to kind of go up just yet, but I'm trying to kind of see their wider picture as to why, all right, let's give her a go.
Gerard, what are your feelings when it comes to Kiana James and being on Raw and where she can go? Yeah,
what's interesting, I think what they have done for her, and I don't know if they did it for her specifically, but they've really, people talked about moves didn't happen, et cetera, et cetera. No, we didn't pay attention to what happened, because the moves that happened on Raw in the women's division literally over the last 3 weeks have been very, very telling. So Rhea gets injured. Rhea's gone. Nia gets moved from being the monster on Raw. Now she's over on SmackDown. Becky is the world champion. So this is almost kind of like what would happen in the men's division when you go from having the super heavyweight to the super dominant as champions to kind of the everyday sized person. So a Becky Lynch who lost her last title to someone in NXT, that now says people in the NXT world can come here and actually have an opportunity. Plus you move Indy Hartwell, you move Candice LeRae, who are kind of filling that heel space. Now we've got space for a lot of things to happen. So I think, and it's also interesting that so many people were moved from NXT to Raw. I think for Kiana, there's really an opportunity. And much like Mech said, there are some people whose careers in NXT don't necessarily reflect their careers in WWE. My God, Becky Lynch is one of them. She was basically almost less than mid-card in WWE. I think the only women's title shot she got was like in a fatal 4-way. And no one would have imagined seeing that Becky Lynch then, that she'd be who she is now. No. I think Kiana James could fall in that same space. We just have not had the environment to be able to see her bloom yet. I think Raw and now in this space with this regime, I'm intrigued to see, because clearly they saw something that everybody else has not been privy to quite yet. And so I want to be able to see what it is that they've seen. And I'm looking forward to it. I like the idea.
Yeah, very, very true. And I think, Max, I think you hit the nail on the head as well in terms of, Kiana kind of fitting that main roster type of build, I guess. Not physically, but in terms of the style and, the type of character that she is and all that kind of stuff. And there's a hell of a lot of potential for her. And I think when I said I wanted her to maybe accomplish more or do a bit more in NXT, not necessarily championships or winning championships, but at least kind of cement herself as like the top heel in NXT before moving up. And I think for me, that's definitely a lot more to do with, just wanting any of our stars to kind of go onto the main roster, kind of, unavoidable. You can't avoid them. It's just one of those things, similar to how Carmelo's kind of moved up now, or Braun Breaker has moved up now. It's like, we've been waiting for this for so long. They've done everything they needed to do, blah, blah, blah. Let's see what happens on the main roster now. Whereas Kiana now, there's still questions. The potential's there. That's not a question. The potential's there. The character's there. But it's just, where does she fit? And it's not a thing where you're looking at her, or the general public are looking at her thinking, right, I needed her to come onto Raw, onto the main roster for however long. But as Gerard said, we've seen the likes of a Becky Lynch, who was the fourth, horsewoman compared to Sasha, Charlotte, and Bayley. She was the fourth one, the forgotten one almost. You know what I mean? And look where she is now. Undeniable, book out, multiple champion, main evented WrestleMania, all this kind of stuff. And if someone said that would happen when she was in NXT, you'd laugh straight away, literally.
Right.
So there's so much that can happen. As we said, there wasn't a lot of movement. The big three stayed together. Also with the big three, you've got Bianca and Jade going for the women's tag team championships as well at Backlash, as well as Naomi in a triple threat match, which makes it so much more interesting. A triple threat match with Tiffany Stratton and the champion Bayley, of course, for the WWE Women's Championship. I guess the general consensus, we know we've had the conversation about these two matches already, I guess, in terms of what could happen with these ladies. Do you see, with Naomi, we don't expect her to win the match, but do you see her still kind of, go, Gerard, go.
Here's the thing, and this has been the talk of the week. I think I said either last week or the week before when she had that title shot against Bayley that I did not expect a clean finish. And we did not get a clean finish. In fact, we got somewhat of a no contest. Thank you, Tiffany Stratton. And so now we're in this space where you have this triple threat where there's an argument that can be made for any of them to win this championship. You could argue Tiffany Stratton could win it because, she's been pretty high since February's Elimination Chamber and hasn't had a chance to really follow up on that like many would have liked. You could argue that Bayley, who would take the title from Bayley in her first opportunity after WrestleMania. And then there is Naomi. So I just want to set this small stage for you. And the stage is really simple. Two names should hopefully make sense out of this. Randy Orton and Jinder Mahal. Randy Orton won the world title at WrestleMania against the late, great Bray Wyatt. And nobody ever imagined him losing the title in his first defense at, strangely enough, an event called Backlash. That's where Randy Orton would lose the world title to Jinder Mahal. I personally feel like this Bayley moment, Bayley is the kind that would be okay losing the title to Tiffany Stratton because you're building the business. Bayley would be the kind that would say it's okay to lose to Naomi because that's my girl. That's my friend. I've said all along, Naomi had a reason for coming back. We wouldn't know what it was for possibly 6 months. We're on month 3, almost 4. She got a WrestleMania moment. She's with the big three. They're all on SmackDown, and they're all fighting for titles at the same PLE. I don't think it's an impossibility that Naomi could win. Think about this image. At WrestleMania, we saw the big three. Can you imagine leaving Backlash, the big three, all with titles?
That would be.
That's where the money is.
That would be.
That's
crazy.
where the money is. And now Bayley doesn't have to deal with damage control because they're over on Raw.
Yeah.
We're in need of some heels. Bayley may or may not turn. Bayley may have a friendly competition with Naomi at this point. Even somewhere in here, Naomi's going to get this title. I don't know if it all happens Saturday, but Naomi losing is not a guarantee at all. I think it's a stronger chance of her winning than people want to give credit for. And I don't rule it out.
I like your optimism. I mean, I ruled it out. But you make a great case, especially with the fact that these three are gonna stay on the same show, call themselves the Big Three, and then walk out of one pay-per-view with every title available to them in the women's division.
Because if Naomi doesn't, she now becomes the weak link.
And to be fair, this was my fear with Bayley. When we're going into WrestleMania, I said, right, Bayley's gonna win as my prediction. But Bayley is the type to say EO needs the title still and do the job for EO. Bayley is the type. She's selfless, and she sees the bigger picture. So, I mean, you're twisting my arm small. It could happen.
I'll add one more thing that'll convince you. The moment is bigger than the rain. We wanted that moment for Bayley. Nobody was thinking about her having a year-long reign. No. We just wanted to see her finally win that championship at WrestleMania, and we got what we wanted.
And you know what? That's exactly what I thought as Mex was talking when he said, you know, Bayley's the selfless one and all the rest of it. But, you know, even in her selflessness, there was that, you know, that drive and that thirst for that WrestleMania moment. You know what I mean? And it's now happened. And yes, it's not impossible for Naomi to walk out of Backlash as a champion. What is definitely possible, and I think definitely on the cards, is for the big three to all hold titles at the same time. I think that's definitely on the cards. Whether that happens at Backlash or later on in the year, that's the argument. But for me, I think that's almost, for me, that would make sense for that moment or that picture or whatever it is to be set in stone for those three to be holding titles at the same time. I wouldn't have imagined it out of the three for it to be Naomi, but at the same time, when you stop and think, she's the veteran.
Yeah, that's the best.
She's the
to
one
be honest,
that, you know, it's that part. It needs to be. That part. Exactly. That's what makes sense to me. It would almost feel too early for Jade. You know, Bianca's had the run that she's had over the last 2 or 3 years, so it's not needed in that respect. Whereas Naomi, yeah, we kind of need that. And, you know, she needs that retribution for herself as well, especially with the way she left and, you know, what she's done since before returning, being, you know, the Knockouts champion, all of that, and what she did for them for the few months that she was there. It makes sense. Again, I still don't see it happening on Saturday, but I see that picture. I see that picture in the same way we got excited a couple of weeks ago with, you know, of Bianca and Jade holding tag team championships and them traveling wherever they go and making appearances here, there, and everywhere outside of WWE with those championships in hand and what that brings. To then have the 3 of them.
Book it.
Why that never crossed my mind when we had that whole conversation, I don't know. But now I'm like, yeah, like that makes sense.
This Saturday.
Gerard's on it, you know.
I'm telling you.
Gerard's there. But I think for me, the other part of it that makes it difficult to see it happen Saturday is Nia Jax.
Okay.
Because she's got involved already. She's already got involved. You know what I mean? It's not like she's just been moved to SmackDown and she's kind of just a possibility. She's involved. She's been physically involved. So maybe she plays a part in some way. But
in
at
whose
the same
favor?
Time, I was just about to say at the same time that could be at the expense of Naomi after Naomi wins the title. So yeah, it doesn't really matter who wins, to be honest. With that said, interesting. Very interesting. I didn't expect a conversation to go here at all.
I need to watch SmackDown now. I need the answers from SmackDown.
Yes. The big 3. There's I am convinced. Because here's what's funny. Like, I think we all, when we mapped this out, first of all, didn't see the big 3 even happening.
Exactly.
Didn't see it happening. Certainly thought they'd keep Jade and Bianca far apart. But they put them together almost the first chance they could get. But with them doing it, I realized, I like this way more than I realized. I needed this more than I realized. And it feels like they're fast tracking us for this big 3. If Damage Control can hold all the titles, so can the big 3.
Very true. And I think to myself, and it's going to bring me on to my next point as well, actually. I think to myself, when we're talking about them all holding championships, I remember a group of lads who all held championships at the same time, and they were known as the Hurt Business.
Yes, they were.
And in saying that, could we then see
they've got a name? That's the other big news of the draft. They got a name.
Forget them being number 1 contenders for the tag team championships. Forget the possibility of them being tag team champions on Friday on SmackDown. they have a name. They are finally officially been called the Pride by WWE. We kind of had this whole thing kind of swimming around a little bit since probably like February, March time. You know, and whenever I guess internet and content creators would kind of put them on whatever graphics and whatnot, you saw the name, but WWE never, you know, acknowledged it themselves until Friday when Michael Cole, and for when it's Michael Cole saying it, you know, it's set in stone. Michael Cole calling them the Pride, obviously, it all came up on the graphics on the show. So they finally have a name, but are we expected to see the Pride holding championships and beating A-Town Down Under on Friday? Is that a thing?
I don't think so. I don't think they're gonna win it. I think they're gonna run with Theory and Waller for a minute, to be honest.
I think so too, and I think another reason why I feel that as well, and what I saw earlier today, a few hours ago, that kind of cemented that was apparently the higher ups at Netflix are a little bit upset that A-Town Down Under are not on Raw, because they have this whole thing of them being, you know, young, good-looking guys who would be perfect for Netflix and whatever. And as much as that's Netflix saying that, I think that's just a general idea with those two anyway. There's a reason why they're together. They are how they are. They do what they do. We've seen them kind of be a lot more active on social media, especially in the run-up to WrestleMania and stuff as well, and ever since the holding championships. So I can't see them losing tag team gold anytime soon. And they probably might be champions for a while. For a while. So yeah, I don't see it happening. It's nice to see the Profits, one with a name, two, you know, still revered as you know, up there in for the tag team titles and stuff. But yeah, it's just going to be a great match on SmackDown, and we'll see what they do from there, I guess. To move on to more championship gold, and yeah, the wrestling community. So yeah, they hurt my head, because the next thing I'm going to talk about is this first week. This first week or so of Swerve being AEW champion has created so much conversation in terms of how he's been presented since winning the championship. Of course, he won the title at Dynasty, beating Samoa Joe. And since he's won, he's come out. I think his first match was it Claudio Castagnoli, the first one?
No, he had an eliminator match against Kyle Fletcher.
So Kyle Fletcher was the first one on Wednesday night, the Wednesday after Dynasty, and he's since also had a match with Claudio Castagnoli as well. The thing that people are talking about is this missing piece of him having the champion, you know, the world champion rollout, I guess. You know, being maybe the first promo of Dynamite, him coming out celebrating and whatnot. But the only thing, I was going to say the only thing, but it's not the only thing. One thing he's done is just have matches. Mex, is this a problem? Are we kind of making something out of nothing, or is there an argument? Is there something to see with how Swerve has been presented since winning the championship?
I wouldn't go as far and say it's a problem. However, we said even last week, because of the likes of an Ospreay over his shoulder, and seemingly Ospreay's got other fish to fry, which is another conversation for another day. But like we said, his presentation needs to be perfect. Swerve's presentation needs to be perfect, given that he's got these other possible contenders over the next few months. Now, you didn't just open up the show with the champion, the brand new champion. You then opened up the show with a feud in Trent Beretta and Chuck and Orange Cassidy, which you paid off the other day on Rampage in what was a very good match, but it's Rampage, probably your lowest watched product. So you thought what? That was more important than the champion, even if the champion's match was in that first segment, you know? And then, okay, the Eliminator match, the match of Carl Fletcher was great and all, but it's like, why is it... Why is the champion so desperate to wrestle like after just winning the world title? Like it's very kind of weird. MJF won the title. MJF had a 20-minute promo with William Regal the day he turned on William Regal and William Regal left the company and all that kind of stuff. Samoa Joe, the exact same thing. 20-minute promo the week after he wins the title. Now you've put out Swerve in the second segment, which by all those that watch demographics and things of that nature, they know it's not as popping as, you know, the first segment of the show or the top of the hour of the next hour or the main event, of course. You put him where you've put him. Then, what was it? Collision was where you've given him his first promo. And a lot of people said to me, it's a good placement because it's following the NBA that would have happened on the channel before, so a lot of people will still be tuned in and stuff like that. But Collision isn't like your primary show either,
right?
And then he went on to have another match later on that night as well with Claudio. Like, please, you've done a good job getting him here so soon and building this story. Like, let's not flush it down the toilet. Let's treat him akin to how we would treat, even on historical merit, all these other guys that have been before him in terms of champions. The desperation to put him out there to wrestle, I don't really understand. I think there's nothing wrong with wrestling. Like we said earlier, this is the wrestling show sort of thing. But like at the same time, there needs to be a level of novelty to your world champion. This isn't the mid-card belt where you can go out there and have bangers every week. This is the world championship. And let's not put stock in the wrong thing. Let's make sure we're presenting him accurately. And I wouldn't say it's a problem, but at this stage, depending on what we see on Dynamite, I might have concerns by the end of this week.
Gerard, what are your thoughts in terms of how they've presented Swerve? And is it, as Mex said, you know, it may not be a problem as such right now, but if it, you know, is it a thing where if it's not fixed or addressed, it could become a problem?
Definitely. It kind of reminds me of CM Punk's first world title reign in WWE. You know, when he cashed in and he became the world champion, man, that was a great moment. Then he was showing up in the middle of the card and he wasn't main eventing, and he wasn't, because they hadn't seen him that way. This is the tough part about when anybody new becomes a world champion. The job of the promotion is to present them as a world champion. And Max is absolutely right. There has to be a degree of novelty to the world champion. And this is an old formula. This is not new. Ric Flair might have shown up on WC or on the old NWA on a weekly basis, but it was to interview and show off that gold belt. But when you saw Ric Flair get in the ring, it was either on pay-per-view or it was a very special moment if you saw him get in the ring like that. MJF to some degree was like that. I think MJF took that to the extreme.
Definitely
but
was.
No doubt about it. When you get to this point, it kind of reminds me of what they were doing initially with Seth Rollins' title reign. You know, this last title reign where they had him fighting unnecessarily, you know, and strangely enough, it's what caused his injury at the top of the year and made him questionable for WrestleMania. He didn't have to have a world title match 3 weeks before Royal Rumble. That was unnecessary, you know. Trying to prove that you're a fighting champion. No, that only works if you're trying to establish a title, not a champion. So when Orange Cassidy was trying to establish the international championship, he fought weekly. And we got to the point where we were like, we're going to see a banger of a match. And now we believe in the international championship. The world title doesn't need that kind of establishing. It's already established. It's already been held by guys who've had lengthy reigns and great matches. So at this point, here's what we need to see. And I know, I can't believe I'm going to say this on this show because some people aren't going to like it. But if you really want to present Swerve as a champion, first thing you do is clean up his act. Don't let him come out in grills. Don't let him come out with that eyeliner. Put a suit on this man. All right? He's the world champion. If this is where the best people wrestle, put this man in a suit and make him look like a world champion. Okay? Doesn't make any sense to me that other people come to the arena looking better than your world champion looks on television. Makes no sense at all. When Samoa Joe became the world champion, before he used to come out in his, regular shorts or a t-shirt, he wore a suit every time he came out because he's the world champion. That's what world champions do. And if you want to convince me that you believe in your world champion, let this man have a makeover. He doesn't have to cut his locks, no, but put some clothes on the man. Let him look like a world champion. And I know some people are going to try to carry me for that, but think about it. He's the world champ. Okay, it's like
you're correct.
When you get a promotion at your job, you might have dressed, kind of like everybody else does on the working floor or whatever. But when you get a promotion, your attire is the first thing that changes.
That's
everybody might be dressed casually. You're dressed business casual. Or maybe you got a shirt and tie on or something, but you look like you're the manager. You look like you're the boss. You're the world champion. It makes no sense to me that every world champion that's come before him has looked the part. My God, Cody right now, Cody always wears a suit. And Cody's holding that belt like Nick Bockwinkel. You look like, oh yeah, that's a world champion right there. Swerve, listen, I love that we saw, but Nana dresses better than Swerve. He does. Swerve, you're the world champion, brother. You are proud to represent us. Here's the thing: you don't have to wear the suit like other people. There's enough. Yes. Talk to King Troy. We talk to Algernon. We got enough designers out there that could design you a dope suit or a dope set of suits. You want to support our community? Go find a black designer. Wear their threads on AEW and wherever you go. Now you look like the world champion. But so the whole thing to me is an issue. You're not dressing the part. You're not looking the part. Having matches. We know you can wrestle. You don't have to prove that to us. That's not. Now you need to look and act like a world champion. That's when we'll believe it.
There's even an aspect of, like you said, he can do it in a Swerve way. It could be like a suit dress, like the blazer and the pants, but not like a shirt. He could come out with his bare chest, but he's wearing the shirt with his chains and everything. Like he can still look like I'm upscaling my regular look to fit the fact I'm a world champion. I definitely agree. I think that's a really good point. I'll just add in here quickly. Ches Nasty gave us a super chat. Thank you. He says, I want to see Swerve beat some of the big dogs in AEW. People like Moxley, Danielson, Kenny Omega when he returns. This is one of the ways that will make his reign actually mean something. I definitely feel, obviously, he hasn't got himself into a program as such, but I'm a big believer of any world champion. I've been saying this with Damian Priest and Cody as well. I definitely feel that your first competitor needs to almost be what I would call a scalp. Someone that you in the past has maybe been a world champion or big fish, like some of those names Ches Nasty mentioned there, and you go and beat them. And it's just like, okay, now we can all sit up and pay attention to this title reign because, like I was suggesting, AJ Styles isn't a bad name for Cody, but Randy Orton with the story they had there, for me, would have been the first pick. Like the first pick for Cody, and about setting that scene sort of thing. So hopefully they do that when Swerve does get into his first program.
To respond to all of that's been said about Swerve, in terms of the way he's been booked, for me it's a problem because for me if and when someone's invested in something, you can tell, you can see it, they do whatever they can to make sure that everyone else sees it. not to go this far, but it's the first thing that just comes to my head. When you say to someone that you love them, or when the way that you show it is telling. So you're going to talk about them all the time. You're going to put them on everything that you can. If you on social media, you post them all the time. Where in terms of wrestling, you're going to put them in the main spot. You know what I mean? You're going to have them face the best. You're going to show them as best as you possibly can. The simple fact that it wasn't the top of the show, he's not had a promo to celebrate, you know, on your main show. For me, that's a big tell. It's a major tell for me to how they see Swerve. And it begs the question, why did you even put the belt on him in the first place? Because I understand why one reason is obviously he was hot and everyone was begging for it and all the rest of it. And I get that. But at the same time, if you're not then behind what the people are saying or want, why then do it? What's the point?
And herein lies another themed week here at our wonderful show called WrstlXtra. The question is, what was the plan for him as champion? Okay. Right. There was the plan for him to win the title, but what's the plan for him as a champion? What kind of reign is he going to have? And the fact that nobody thought, you know how cool it would have been to have had cameras floating with him after he won the title to go, okay, I'm a champion. First thing I got to do is step my game up and watch him go shopping. Like, build that whole thing. Watch him go shopping, see what kind of things he'd pick out. Don't show what he puts on until the first time he comes through that camera. And when he comes through, they hear the music and he comes out in that sharp suit. You go, whoa. We just watched the road and the transformation from you becoming a contender to being a champion. But you got to plan it. And I don't see the plan. And I know some would say, well, 7 days is too soon. Well, we're going to see what happens this week. We're going to see what happens this week. But one of the things that I think we have seen is there's not necessarily a lot of wholesale across the board planning happening here with what AEW is doing. And it becomes telling.
Just some other things to just add to this. Usually another wrinkle I've just remembered is that the world champion is very likely, more often than not, they don't actually appear on the first show after they win the world title. They might show a video package and they use that to create some, you know, wanting, where is the world champion sort of thing. And then they really get him cleaned up. And then the following week, the world champion makes his big appearance or whatever the case is. That's another thing they've probably missed, is sort of putting him straight out two shows back to back, wrestling and stuff like that. And then I'm just remembering now, Kenny Omega. When Kenny Omega cheated, he beat Moxley. He ran away with the world title, him and Don Callis, which I thought was brilliant at the time. And said, you know, the first thing you're going to do is hear me on Impact.
Right.
Now, of course, that's a different time altogether. But look at how they have just all of a sudden just made the world champion, just created that aura around him, whether it's good or bad, he's a bad guy, whatever the case is. Like, I definitely felt putting him in that second match after that Trent Chuck segment on Dynamite,
I can't believe it that way.
This feels like an ordinary belt. And obviously Ospreay later on in the card that we talked about, he went on to win that gauntlet thing. He's gone off to maybe do some international title stuff, which seemingly could possibly buy Swerve some time, where we were kind of saying, you know, he might find himself in some predicaments come summertime, but maybe that's not the case, which I would say they've booked that pretty well, if that's what they've always planned, to divert Ospreay's attention. But I just really feel like do you even think it's a problem that, I believe, if I'm correct, this Wednesday they're determining the number one contender for Double or Nothing? Do you think it's too early, or is it okay? I mean, time-wise, I think it's probably about fine to when the pay-per-view is. But we'll see how they determine it, because ultimately you have a ranking system, so that should determine it.
True.
But yeah, we'll see.
For me, the issue isn't necessarily what Swerve has done. I don't have an issue with him having 2 matches so far and all that kind of thing, even against the opponents that he's had. I think it's more so the way Swerve has kind of come out, something someone said, almost desperate to have defend his title.
Please let me fight.
Which was weird to me. And then of course the positioning. If he came out, cut his promo, and it was the first section of Dynamite, top of the show. He came out, cut a promo, and then was interrupted by Carl Fletcher, and then they had a match. Fine, no problem. I'd have no issue. But for me, it's the positioning. It's the way the promo went, and I'm just like, this is just weird to me. In terms of the number one contender, that makes sense. That I don't see that as a problem at all. The problem is, how you mentioned the whole rankings and whatever, already causing a problem after being reintroduced, which is very weird and not surprising at the same time. But then to kind of comment on, go all the way back in terms of like Swerve's look. There was this thing that he shared, or AW shared on socials, where he did like a Cribs style thing. And I was like, oh, this is nice. This is kind of almost like a tribute, I guess, to the whole hip hop thing, and he's all about the hip hop and blah blah blah. But then when I realized it was Daly's place,
right?
As in what he was showing around was Daly's place.
Yes. I saw that.
And here's the thing. We talk about this show's kind of had this, engulfing thing of the plan, and there hasn't been a plan for Swerve, but there's definitely been a plan for someone else to become a champion.
That we could see from the first night. Yeah, like we saw that a mile away.
Yeah, there is a plan, but it's just not Swerve. That's it. It's as simple as that. It's one of those things, and it's obvious, and it's obvious, but in a scary way, it's too obvious, because even with Samoa Joe, it was rare that we felt as though he was the main guy in AEW. As much as he's holding the championship, as much as his run was credible, it never felt as he was the top guy. And I don't think he was ever supposed to be. I don't think anyone ever really necessarily wanted that or expected that. But I think for me with Swerve, it's even worse. And that's what bothers me. It's worse.
I'll say the plan from here on out must be then Swerve Hangman at All In as a main event to continue their feud. If it's not going to be Ospreay, then I'm sure it'll probably be Hangman, which is fine with me. Let's take a leaf out of Gerard's book and see positives. It's only week one.
It is week one.
So let's see. It's been a very jam-packed week with a lot of Swerve stuff and a lot of not getting what we want from the world champion. Agreed, but it is only week one. So let's see, this week's Dynamite and how they position him from here.
And maybe, I know it's not popular to say, but maybe we do need to cut AEW some slack. Like maybe we do. After all, they are the Pepsi of pro wrestling, and they're fighting this evil juggernaut, and it's so hard to do that. So, maybe we need to cut them some slack.
They're fighting Harvey Weinstein.
Clearly. How do you do that?
Whoa. I mean, we're talking about a plan, and obviously our plan was to have an hour show. It's now gone to almost an hour and 20 minutes. So we've messed up our plan. But just to stick with the plan very quickly, something I needed to do before the end of this show is, there was a tragedy happened within the wrestling community this past week. The passing of Trey D, who was the creator and main man for the social media space Wheel of Wrestling. Trey D suddenly passed away. I don't know the details. I've not tried to find them out either. It's not one of those things that I do. But he suddenly passed away. Very, very difficult situation, I guess, in the sense where, Trey was that guy. And I said this to him a few times myself when we spoke. At one point, we were kind of working together. And I said this to him so many times, like, he was living my best life in the sense where he was everywhere. He spoke to everyone. He was the guy that was propping up all the indie talents and not just black talent. but just indie talents in general. You know, you would see him at spaces like Mission Pro, and Thunder Rosa started that up, and you know, and pushing those things. And I believe he was at one of the Arche shows as well at one point.
Both of them.
He was at both of them. There you go. That guy was just everywhere. How I don't know, but that guy was literally just everywhere. And it was nice to see so many tributes over the last few days. I believe there was like a balloon release tribute done by a few people, including the trio Culture Inc. As well as so many of us. He, as I said, he knew so many people, touched so many people's lives, and I know you two kind of had, you know, your encounters with him as well. Just give me very brief synopsis of like your time with Trey, and what difference you felt he made within the wrestling space. You know, in the short time that he was actually kind of like involved in the whole thing. Mex.
Yeah, very welcoming from literally my very first post. He was probably within my first 20 followers that I had on Instagram from back in 2020. Just because he loves this and he saw someone else posting stuff and he just wants to get in on it. And just kept in contact with him as best as possible. Met him for the first time at the Big E's Big Brunch put on by Andre as well, over Philadelphia at the WrestleMania weekend. Introduced myself. It was like, oh, you're him, did blah blah blah, and he had that whole interaction. And yeah, absolute tragedy to hear just, you know, 2 weeks later or whatever it is that he's gone. That's someone you were literally just with. So yeah, I mean, I've said this, he's someone that, you know, championed indie wrestling, black wrestling, female wrestling particularly. You know, so although I know it's we all like to cover the kind of glossy products and stuff like that in WWE and AEW. We need those people as well that are covering it from the grassroots and kind of telling us, you know, who to watch out for, who's next, who's up and coming and stuff like that, and supporting those people. You know, often saw him with Thunder Rosa, Renegade Twins, all of these guys. So yeah, just massive tragedy, but you know, hope his family you know, are dealing well as best as they can, I guess, at this time. And yeah, just rest in power to him.
A very significant loss, which strangely enough happened a week ago today. And it is, you know, it's one of those things where sometimes our part of the wrestling community can be segmented at times for various and sundry reasons. But he was a person who really loved to support a lot of people and was willing to make that known. You know, we didn't have a lot of interactions, but the interactions we had were really, really good. And one of the things that I enjoyed about him was, you know, his brand was so powerful. You'd see it everywhere and not even know it was him. You know, I mean, you just see that "We Love Wrestling" everywhere. And it was just like, wow, this video's out and this video's out and this is cool and that is cool. And so, it's amazing again to see, you know, I saw him at the Ashe shows for sure. And seeing how he has been connected to so many people in the wrestling community, it is just a reminder that, you know, we have to treasure life. We have to treasure the people that we deal with. We have to allow the main thing to be the main thing. We're going to differ in our approach. We're going to differ in how we do what we do. And that's okay. If we all did it the same way, then we all wouldn't be necessary. But I think when we get to the point where we, you know, start creating walls and start doing really weird things, and we forget the main thing as the main thing, then we lose people that are really valuable to us. And so I'm grateful for the interactions that that we had. You know, if you really want to see how significant a person is, you can see how people speak of them, you know, when they're not around. And so many people have said so many nice things about Trey. I was really moved Saturday night. I believe it was on I think it was on Rampage Saturday night.
Rampage.
When Thunder Rosa at the end of her match paid tribute to him by saying, "I love wrestling, you love wrestling, we love wrestling." That was huge to me. And so, you know, our thoughts and prayers are with him or with his family, with the wrestling community that has certainly lost someone significant. And to me, the lesson here, I don't know that anybody can ever do what he did. We can obviously try to bridge that gap, but I think what's really important is that we find value and common ground with each other and love each other well. Make sure the people that you support, make sure they know that. Make sure they don't have any questions, because life changes really, really fast. And in the event that it does, you want to make sure that people are well aware of how you feel about them and that people know that they were loved.
For sure. I didn't really want to end on a sad note, but our time
So let's not. Congratulations, Trick Williams, the new NXT champion. That happened last Tuesday. I mean,
that happened last week, Tuesday. Oh my God. It feels like it was like a month ago.
I know.
Yeah.
The ground literally shook when he won the championship, which that visual is literally that. Wow.
Literally groundbreaking. That's mad. That's mad.
Yes.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens on spring breaking this tonight. I feel as though there wasn't much, obviously, with the whole draft thing. For some reason, a lot of people thought that NXT were going to make picks, but I feel as though we're going to see I think maybe the second week of spring breaking might be open to a couple of surprises in terms of people moving to NXT. I think that might be why the championship match happened in the first week and not the second week. Maybe. Yeah. We'll see what happens. With all of that said, oh my gosh, or almost an hour and a half. What are we doing?
One of those shows.
It is. We're talking about the plan, and our plan just messed up completely. It's fine. It's fine.
Hey.
It's fine.
The plan was to talk about all this stuff, and we did.
Very true. Very true. Guys, you have been watching WrstlXtra on the WrestleManiac UK YouTube channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe to see when this guy Mex puts out all of his reactions to WWE, AEW, everything else in between. You can also find Mex on the Wrestling's YouTube channel as well. Catch him every week with the guys, the Mandem, for their weekly shows and outputs. You can also find Mex on WWE Gorilla Position. I believe the last thing that I saw was Mex interviewing Piper Niven at WrestleMania.
So dope. Yes,
what in the world? What in the world?
Yes, sir.
Massive. Yeah. You can follow Mex on socials, WrestleManiac.uk on Instagram and WrestleManiac UK on X. Follow this guy, the omnipresent one, that is Gerard Bonner, on all things Bonafide. You can find him on his own show, The Faction Show, as well as WWT Live. You can find him doing all of his broadcasting and commentary on our Shea Wrestling, Southern Honor Wrestling, IWE, Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling, All Caribbean Wrestling. And Gerard, there is something that is happening or is going out today. Can you tell us about that real quick?
Yes, tonight is the Shad Gaspard Memorial Cup Tournament. Of course, we remember Shad, one half of Crime Time, who passed away around 4 years ago, received the Warriors Award. Well, for the first time, there is a special tournament in his honor. It's put together by the Pope, Elijah Burke, and it's airing tonight on Triller TV or Fight TV, 7 p.m. Eastern, whatever time in your particular time zone. But I'm also doing commentary for that as well tonight. So that'll be awesome if you guys can check that out. Be fantastic. Some great names involved in this tournament, including Kenny King, JTG, Tom Latimer, Casey Navarro. A lot of really cool names involved in this. So definitely check it out if you get a chance. Again, tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern on Triller TV, Fight TV.
Phenomenal. And you can find me a Dazzle on Black Wrestling Alliance on Instagram, BWA Dazzle on X. Guys, we've got to go. We've got things to do. It's not the only thing. The only thing we do is not just talk wrestling. We've got lives as well. Guys, we will see you again next week.
Peace out.
Peace.